Ready to make a real impact every day? Join the Active Day Home Care team and help clients maintain their independence in the comfort of their own homes. Make a difference in someone's life as you provide essential daily assistance and protect their health and happiness. Earn up to $20 an hour and enjoy additional perks like optional daily pay, 401k, paid time off, ongoing educational training, and more. Join a team that values care, compassion, and your professional growth. Visit activeday.com to apply.
Hi. Before we begin, just so you know you're not alone on this journey, at papernapkinwisdom.com, we've got free tools designed to help leaders like you find clarity and momentum. No pressure, just support. You can grab them anytime. You can even grab them from social media. The link's in the bio.
Welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom, where we share pearls of wisdom shared by some of the world's top entrepreneurs, leaders, and difference makers. Here's your host, Govind Jayaraman.
Hi, I'm Govind Jayaraman, and this is Paper Napkin Wisdom, episode 263. What if the reason you're not leading at the level you should be isn't because you're not ready, but because you're still waiting to be given permission? In today's episode, I sit down with the one and only David Herle, a veteran political strategist, pollster, and host of the Herle Burly and the Curse of Politics. He's advised prime ministers, led national campaigns, and shaped conversations that define Canada's political landscape. But what he shares today goes way beyond politics. David's napkin is a wake-up call. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a coach, a team leader, or someone with a message burning inside you, what if the only thing standing between you and your impact is your own hesitation? David and I dig down to what it really means to claim power, not through force, but through conviction, not through entitlement, but through ownership. You'll hear why waiting to be chosen is a dead end and what stepping up looks like in real time. So as you listen, ask yourself, where have I been waiting for someone to hand me the mic? What would change if I just took the stage? This episode isn't about being louder. It's about being clearer and bolder in how you lead. Let's dive in. David Herle, welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom. I'm really excited to be sitting across a microphone with you today.
Well, I'm a little scared, but we'll see how it goes. Thanks for having me.
So I don't understand why you'd be scared. You're the one with the hockey stick in the background. I don't even have a hockey stick behind me. So like this is different, right? This is good.
I am armed.
You are armed. Exactly. Yep. Exactly. And
I could play you a lovely acoustic tune on the guitar or swat you over the head with a hockey stick. That's
a lover and a fighter. It's fantastic. So you shared a great paper napkin with me, and given all of the stuff that you've gotten up to in your life, I'm really interested in understanding why you shared this with me. You said, power is never given away. If you want it, you have to take it. Why did you share that with me?
Well, first of all, this is not the most important rule that an ordinary citizen needs to carry around in their head all the time, but it's a little more relevant to politics.
Right.
And you asked me to write down something that I had learned over time that had made a positive impact in my career. And I really learned that lesson, if I can say it, from The Lord of the Rings, which I'm an enormous fan of. At one point, I had a company called the Gandalf Group. So the lesson of The Lord of the Rings is that ring of power, whoever has it, doesn't want to give it up, will not give it up. They could lose it, or it could be forcibly taken from them, but they'll never give it up. And as I spent a life in politics, I came to realize that was true, that people don't leave significant positions voluntarily. And so it's been relevant to me in two very important circumstances, one of which is in the early 2000s, when it was clearly time for Paul Martin to take over from Jean Chrétien as leader of the Liberal Party. And a lot of people, a lot of people told me at that time, you do not have to push him. He'll leave on his own. He's been there long enough. He wants to spend time at the cottage with his wife. He wants to spend time with his grandchildren. And I'm like, no, he wants to be the Prime Minister of Canada. Nobody has ever voluntarily resigned this position, and he won't be the first. And that proved to be correct. He had to be forced out. And similarly, going back to the last year or so with Justin Trudeau, there were so many people in the Liberal Party sitting back and saying, surely he'll know it's time to go. He's smart enough to read the polls. His marriage is broken up. All these things. He'll leave on his own. He won't do this. And I'm like, no. If something doesn't happen, he's going to lead the party into the next election because he still thinks he's got a chance and to hang on to this job. And so it took. I mean, I was voicing this for a long, long time on my podcasts and privately. But ultimately, if it wasn't for Chrystia Freeland standing up and doing what she did, he would have been the candidate in this election, and the Liberal Party would have gotten smoked. So my lesson from life is when people have real power, they don't give it up. And if you don't want them to have it anymore, you have to take it from them.
That's amazing. And I love the reference back to the One Ring, right? Because it corrupts like good people. Bilbo was corrupted by the ring.
Right.
And
absolutely. And ultimately, even Frodo, whom Gandalf chose of all the people on earth to do this job, even at the end, Frodo wouldn't give it up.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
So there's a powerful lesson in that. And so look, for people listening, Liberal Party is a party in Canada, but you're not talking about this just being a Liberal Party of Canada thing. This same thing plays out.
Joe Biden.
Right.
Joe
Same
Biden.
thing. Right? Because he said he was going to do it for one term, but then
transitional president. Yep.
Put the ring on and didn't want to give it up.
That's correct.
Everybody does this. And it's not just liberals. It's conservatives do this too, right?
It's not partisan. It's human.
It's human. Why is it like that? What is it about power that helps us lose our way or makes us lose our way, or that we lose our way so easily in the face of?
Maybe it's the element of control over things. I mean, we all like to have control in our own lives. We all like to feel like we're in charge, and that's on a small scale. And when people don't feel that, they feel disoriented and alienated. Maybe it's just an extreme version of that is just, Henry Kissinger once said when he was engaged to a reasonably normal looking woman, he was an unattractive man. He said, power is the ultimate aphrodisiac. So when you have it, it's obviously intoxicating and you feel very, very good about yourself. And I don't know. I've never had it. I've helped people get it, and I've helped remove it from other people, but I've never had it. So I don't know what the feeling is, but I know that.
But you've been beside them. You've been beside them, right? You've been beside them when they're when they're slipping the ring on. Is it something that you can see happen? Can you see it? Is it obvious when people get that power that something changes about their relationship with it?
Yeah, I think there is something immediate, but it's also builds over time, right? And you become, I don't know what was going through Bilbo's or Frodo's mind, but certainly what happens in politicians' minds is that they really do come to believe nobody else could do this job, right?
Yeah.
And that they're dealing with such weighty issues, and they're dealing with such difficult questions, and they're dealing with them so well in their own mind that it's impossible for them to imagine that somebody else could come along and do a better job. And in fact, I believe that sitting on his couch, wherever he is right now, Justin Trudeau believes he could have won the election probably bigger than Mark Carney did. That's just the nature.
And is it part of the resilience that people have to face? Like part of the ordeal of getting the job in the first place is that you have to prove everybody wrong. You have no one person per cycle makes it through the maze to get to that place. So there has to be this like deep-seated amount of resilience in the face of you can't do it, you can't do it, you can't do it. So they're used to shoving that aside, right?
Right. Very much so. The Trudeau is a very good example. He would say to you, anybody that came up and told him, you can't win this upcoming election, you need to step down. He would say, well, people told me I couldn't do any number of things, that I could never be elected in the first place, that I could never be reelected, and I've proven people wrong every time. I won that boxing match. I am at my best when I'm up against adversity. Any number of rationalizations that belie all of the external realities.
Right. Right. So you sort of come by it honestly. You come by that sort of that ability to shut down the critics. But when you do that too completely, you lose the ability to harvest useful information from them, right? There's useful information in contrarian opinion. There's useful information in people criticizing you, even saying you can't do something.
Well, this is also one of the things that happens to politicians and leaders in positions, is that they are cocooned.
Yeah.
And so it is easy for them to not believe that exists out there.
Mm-hmm.
And, they can read polling data, but all they are surrounded by are people that are nice to them, who support them, who say nice things to them, whether that's in their office or in their caucus or when they're out meeting liberals at events everywhere. They're not confronted with that, right? What they're confronted with is support and nurturing. And so they can ignore all of that, and they have power. They are, regardless of what anybody says about them, they're making decisions that day that will make a difference and make an impact. And so it all comes together in a reality that I think it's a pretty amazing stat that nobody in the history of Canada has woken up on a Tuesday morning and said, I don't want to be the prime minister anymore, and I'm going to resign.
What about the walk in the snow, right? What about
walk in the snow? Pierre Trudeau.
Yeah, Pierre Trudeau's walk in the snow.
Pierre Trudeau was had run in the 1980 election after having stepped down after losing the 1979 election, was recruited by the Liberals to come back and run in 1980, and promised to resign if elected. Promised to resign before the next election if elected. He went into the 5th year of his mandate, tried everything to try to get reelected, including a bogus peace mission around the world where he was shuttling himself from capital to capital, pretending that he was going to be the person that ended the nuclear threat in the world. And these were all ploys to try to get reelected. And at the end of it, he was, 20 points down to Mulroney and going to get smoked when he quit. And he'd run out the clock. There was no time left. He left under extreme duress. There was no walk in the snow. And there's no doubt in my mind, from the people I've talked to that knew Pierre Trudeau, that if he thought he could have won the 1984 election, he'd have run, despite promising to quit in the previous campaign.
Right. So, and I only bring that up because that's the only thing that I can think of in lore. Now, contrast that to the American system, right? In the American system, there's supposed to be a 2-term limit. We'll see whether or not.
See if it holds. Yep.
We'll see if it holds, because I think the one ring is on someone's finger. He doesn't want to give it up. And this 2-term structure was put in place to promote the idea that not only would it be automatic constitutionally taken away from you, but you would have to give it up. You knew you had to give it up. Is that a positive way of considering how to transition away from power and make sure that it's not consolidated in one place for too long?
Yeah, your American examples made me think of an anecdote. There are a lot of people who make the argument that George Washington is the most important person in the history of American democracy for this reason. He left.
Right.
He was the first president. He was the general of the army. Quite likely he could have stayed on had he wanted to, right? And he left, and he set the precedent for the country that's how it worked. So Yeah, I mean, I think there is merit to term limits, to be honest. I heard somebody say, it might have been Richard Nixon, whom I probably shouldn't quote, but I heard somebody say once something made a lot of sense. It said, you go into office with a set of ideas that you've accumulated over the course of your life, and you use them up. And it's impossible for you to regenerate yourself in office. You're too busy doing it. You're no longer doing the reading, the learning, the interaction with other people, the life experiences that brought you to the initial point. So, that's why eventually, if people stay too long, they start to get run around by the bureaucrats because they're out of ideas and they're just there now.
That's amazing. I love that idea. And it's almost like, the guitar is behind you and there's a similar
That's Bernie
idea.
Taupin's guitar.
Oh, that's pretty cool. For everybody listening, who's Bernie Taupin?
Bernie Taupin is Elton John's lyricist. And all of the great songs that you know from Elton John from the 70s and 80s and etc. written on that, lyrics were composed on that guitar.
That is cool. All right. I'm going to get distracted for a second, but let's play with that for a second, because songwriters are sometimes criticized for losing their perspective on where they were and not being able to write about their new experiences anymore from a different lens. It's almost the same thing, right? Like
Totally. It's like, a band is done when their songs are about the rigors of life on the road and the travails of a rock star, as opposed to wanting to get laid and wanting a fast car, right?
Right. Chicks, cars, in the Third World War, right? There are only three things worth fighting for. So in that, thinking about that's sort of the same thing you're saying here when it talks to politicians. Why is it so hard for people in power to have uncomfortable conversations where they actually disagree with somebody and where they can actually have, respectful discourse with somebody and disagree with them and learn from that? Why is that so hard?
They just don't put themselves in that position. When Kathleen Wynne was the Premier of Ontario, and people were turning on the Liberal government, and popularity was plummeting, she went on a listening tour of the province where she had open town halls all across the province and advertised them. They weren't partisan things. Come one, come all. People said terrible things to her and asked her terrible questions. She's a remarkably strong person, and she was able to take that. But, I don't know if you've noticed, but the more authority people have, generally, the less they like to be questioned.
Right.
Right.
And I just wonder why we fall into this trap, because we can intellectually sit there. I mean, we know this to be true, right? You have surely in your various roles, you have helped to get people elected. You've brought people into the prime minister's office in this country more than once. So with that experience, surely you've maybe tapped them aside on the shoulder and said, hey, at some point you're going to have to step down. At some point you're going to run out of ideas. At some point you're going to have to listen to somebody. Right?
Yeah.
And yet nobody does. So intellectually people know this to be true, and yet we all fall for the trap. And I think CEOs fall for this trap too, right? Like when you're building a company, you could be at the top of the company and you're not listening anymore.
Right.
There's a way you do things.
But companies are dealing with that because basically CEOs don't last much longer than 4 or 5 years anymore, most of them. And the board moves them out and brings somebody else back in, new ideas, new approach.
Right. And there's an accountability around dollars and cents that doesn't always exist in politics.
And so the boards of directors do that at about 5 years. And in politics, the electorate does that after about 10 years.
Right.
Right.
And so, because
very difficult to get reelected after 2 terms or anywhere between 8 and 10 years in office. Very few people get reelected after that.
Yeah. And your point though, is that they're not giving it away. They're not retiring. They're having it taken away from them. And sometimes
they're like boxers. They're like boxers, right? They fight one election too many and they get kicked around. And so people only leave these jobs in one of two circumstances. Either they are facing imminent an unavoidable electoral defeat, or they are defeated, right? Sometimes they don't run, but they wait till the very end, as I said with Trudeau. Or Mulroney is another classic example of people that went into the 5th year. Is there a way? Is there a chance? Can something happen? And when when the clock runs out, they say, "All right, I'm out of here," and some dope can come in here and carry this steaming Hulk for the campaign.
Right.
But they don't leave when they don't leave until they have to.
It's almost like that Jim Carrey character in Dumb and Dumber is like, you're saying I have a chance. You know?
Exactly.
He said, you have one chance in a million that you're going to get elected. Oh, so you're saying I have a chance. So the question, like this idea about, so let's go back to the Lord of the Rings metaphor, because I think it's really great, right? I mean, I love that you took it from there and you're bringing it here. When people put on the One Ring, the Eye of Sauron would see them, right? And that would scare them. It would scare Frodo in the movies. If you've seen him, if you read the book, it scares him into taking the ring off because he's afraid of being seen for wearing the power. Is there a check and balance like that in the real world, or does that just not exist anymore?
No, that doesn't exist anymore. There's no Sauron over top of the One Ring. There's just, you are the top of the heap.
Right.
And what you say goes. And a bunch of other really important, impressive people are running around listening to what you say and then executing on what you do. I mean, I actually don't have much trouble understanding how much fun that could be.
Oh, no. I mean, the way when you talk about it that way, it sounds pretty fun, pretty great, right?
Yeah.
And why would you want to give it up? Right? Why would you want to give it up? So when you I just think it's interesting. How do you facilitate? So you do this really well in Cursive Politics. You bring people with different minds, different positions, different perspectives. Now, none of them are wearing the One Ring, right?
Right.
But they're influential people, very influential people. And you're.
But there's an enormous difference between influence and power. I've had a lot of influence. I've never had power. I've never made a decision. I have advised people who were making decisions. But they make the call. I've never made the call. Right.
Right. And why? So you're drawing the distinction, and I think it's an important one. But why are you making it so clear that there's a difference between influencing and making the call? Because there's a subtle but big chasm there, right?
Well, if you're an advisor, your advice may be taken, maybe not taken. No matter how close you are to the person, they'll have a different point of view, and it is their point of view that will prevail. So, if you think I'm influential, it's because maybe I can get an idea in front of the person, but I can't make them do it. And I've, whether it was Paul Martin or Kathleen Wynne or any of the other people I've worked with, quite often disagreed with me. And, occasionally you think, fuck, I wish I could have made that decision, but I didn't run.
Yeah.
And I didn't take the power from anybody. I didn't put myself forward and say, I'm the person.
Was that a decision? Like, did you choose to be a person of influence versus a person of power?
Just sort of evolved. I think when I first got involved in politics back in Saskatchewan at home, I always assumed I would run. I thought that was the purpose of getting involved in politics. And I didn't really think that people like me, I didn't know really that people like me existed. And I've had a pretty good run in politics. I've had, as you say, lots of influence and lots of opportunity to affect events in a way that's very rewarding. But I think I always thought I would run. And then it just kind of got away from me. First of all, I started moving around. I went to Montreal to work for a while. And then I moved to Ottawa to work in politics for almost 20 years. And now I'm in Toronto. I don't belong anywhere. Like, where would I run? I'm not a citizen of anywhere. I can't go back to Regina and pretend to be from there. Everybody in Ottawa that's like me is just a tourist in that town for doing a tour of duty in politics. Like, you're a genuine Ottawa resident. I lived in Ottawa for 20 years. I couldn't find Bell's Corners for my life depended on it.
Most people can't.
I heard about the traffic there every day, but I don't know where the fuck that is. And so I don't really have a place to run. Also, to be honest, life got comfortable.
Right.
Life got comfortable because the job of an member of parliament is a brutal job. So, I mean, it's just a brutal job. Like, you are in Ottawa for 5 days, working day and night, and then you get on a plane and you fly back to your riding. And instead of getting a break or catching up with your wife and kids, um, you are going steady for those 2 days from one event to another event, to meetings in your riding, to meeting with people who have issues that you need to solve, and going to the Gurdwara for this and going to the old folks home for that. And it's just a 7 day a week, 24 hour a day job. And frankly, many of those people, none of those people have power, and very few of them have influence. So it is, it's tough to talk yourself into doing that at a certain point in life.
Yeah. And I guess that was one of the questions that I was going to get to is there a difference between the power of being, a representative, like a member of the House of Representatives, a member of the Senate, a member of the House of Commons here versus being in cabinet and, more importantly, the leader of a party, right? Like, I'm thinking about the recent election that we just had, and Pierre Poilievre, leader of the party, no longer he's not a member of parliament.
Right.
For the first time in his adult life, really. I mean, he's been a member of parliament that entire time, and a relatively influential one all that time.
Oh. Defeated a sitting cabinet minister in an election I was in charge of, so I'm in a way responsible for him.
Yeah. So that's funny. I didn't know that. So when you think about that, right? How does power look for just an MP? Is it different than? Is that the same as this power that's never given away? Do they always want to hold on to it forever?
No, it's not. And people frequently decide they've had enough of being an MP. It's not like they're devoid of power. I mean, in their ridings, people come to them and they say, I'm having trouble getting some immigration papers completed, or I'm having trouble getting this out of the government, or I'm having trouble getting that benefit out of the government. And the MP can go and fix that for them. That's
right.
Power.
That is power.
Right? They have access to the system, and they can go in and they can change a person's life for the better by fixing a problem that they have. That's power. They have less power when they get close to Ottawa. A lot of people argue caucuses should have more power than they do. But frankly, we've gotten to a point where the leader is so central to the electoral choice. Like, this election was about Carney versus Poilievre. It wasn't even really about Liberal versus Conservative, much less one candidate versus another candidate. Right. Everybody had in their minds the two leaders. And so everybody who's in those two caucuses knows that they are there because people voted for their leader, not for them. Right. And so that's where the power goes. And right. It's they're influential. They have, I don't mean to diminish it too much. Caucus meetings are, and especially if Carney goes back to traditional caucus meetings, Trudeau did something really terrible. Trudeau invited his senior staff to join caucus meetings. And I should give you a little bit of history. Caucus is when all the elected members of a party get together, and they do it once a week, and they all meet. And up until Justin Trudeau was the prime minister, there was nobody in that room but an elected caucus member, not one person, not a staffer, not anything. And it was just their time.
And it's confidential, right? It's like the term
totally
is in camera, right?
Right.
It's in camera, which means that it's behind closed doors. What's said in the room stays in the room. It's actually this really big veil of secrecy around really even what could be on the agenda. Nobody even talked about that.
Nobody ever knows. Nope. And if somebody stands up in there and says, Prime Minister, the Minister of Immigration is really messing this up, and we're going to pay a terrible price for this, and you've got to do something about the Minister of Immigration, right? Well, that you can say that in front of your caucus colleagues to the Prime Minister. That's influence in a big way, right? And so those caucus meetings, but they change when the staff is there, right? Because frankly, a lot of times you're going to want to talk about the staff. You're going to want to say to the Prime Minister, I can't get through to you anymore. I've got some shit I want you to know, right? Some uncomfortable things about what people are saying to me in my riding. about our government. And I've asked for a meeting for 6 months and I can't get through. Right. And so I hope that Carney goes back to just making those true caucus meetings, because I think that is one of the few times when a prime minister does encounter the truth.
Right.
Right.
And that's a powerful thing. The other thing that I think that's really interesting about this idea that power is never given away, and if you want it, you have to take it, is that even amongst influencers, right? Because influencers are only influential if they're able to get close to that person.
Right.
So I think it's hard for people to be critical or indifferent about the things that the person they're supposed to be able to influence are doing, isn't it? Like if you're, you're a liberal strategist for many years, if you're openly critical about them in a conversation, or if there's a debate that otherwise is out of camera, meaning that it's public and out there for everybody to see, and somehow somebody who's consolidated power doesn't like what they're saying, you've lost influence over that person because they'll shut you out, won't they?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, to some extent that happened to me in Ottawa over the last couple of years because I was so vocal about the need for Trudeau to go. I was told I was a traitor. I was told I was destroying the morale of the government. I was told I was hurting the government's chances for re-election, and I was not part of the inside anymore. I was an outsider. I was right.
Right.
But I had made a decision that I just had to. I mean, the nature of our show is the truth. Nature of our podcast. It only works when the people on it are telling the truth and telling what they think. And it was clear as day to me a while ago that Trudeau had run out of gas in the tank to be the prime minister, but second of all, the Canadians were not going to re-elect him, and in fact, were going to defeat him in a way that rendered the Liberal Party existentially challenged. It wasn't going to be a normal defeat; it was going to be a beating.
Yeah, it was going to be a pummeling, and you were very vocal about that for many years. I mean, I remember it had to be at least a couple of years ago that you started talking about that, and that's what I mean. You fall out of favor when you have uncomfortable conversations about what is really happening, and isn't that?
Well, they say politics is a team sport, and that means everybody.
Yeah. But think about that. Like, we are incapable of having uncomfortable conversations in this current dynamic, in this consolidation of power, in the place where people are never going to give away the power and people are not going to listen to the criticism. What do we need to do to fix that? Because I think, look, if we bring people from left to right together, we'll agree probably on a lot of things, probably a majority of things. And we can argue whether it's 70%, 80%, or 90%. But there's going to be some parts that we're going to disagree with. Wouldn't it be better to have a conversation about that and agree to find a way through? Like, I still think that if somehow the two parties that end up with the supermajority could find a way that they both would agree is the right way forward, man, that would be great for the country.
Well, except that the entire system is set up to be adversarial.
Right.
They're called the official opposition.
Right. Two sword lengths apart, all that.
They're supposed to oppose. That is their job. And it's, I mean, what you really need, I mean, a voice of conflict with the leader that is coming from a place of, well, as the prime minister might say, prior ill will, is you're not going to be influenced by that. Pierre Poilievre saying something to Mark Carney bad about Mark Carney, he's not going to really influence Mark Carney because he knows that he's not on his side. He's not trying to help him. He's just trying to make a point to the public. Whereas the people that are close to you, I mean, the ability to speak truth to power. And some leaders are better at accepting that than others. And some staffers are better at providing that, or ministers and caucus members are better at providing that than others. But that is really the test, because if you hear it from somebody you know is on your side and you know wishes you well, then it can be very influential.
Right.
And so the dynamics, I mean, Paul Martin was amazing. It's not like he didn't have ego or anything like that, but I've never met somebody with more power in their life that was more open to criticism, but from the right people, right?
Right. And that's where I was going to go. It was like, give us an example. Like, let's finish with some hope. Like, who's somebody who wore the badge and was open to and I don't mean paying lip service. Tell me what you think was wrong, and I'll promise to throw it. I'll round file it right away. I'll throw it right in the trash. No, it's like, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it from different perspectives. Let's have an active debate where that person is silent and curious. And you're saying Paul Martin was like that.
Paul Martin was very much like that, and he had long ongoing meetings that would involve both the senior bureaucratic officials and his political staff. And the amazing thing about these meetings was that everybody could disagree with each other and with him in these meetings. It was all open. So, normally the bureaucrats come in and they've got a point of view and they present a united front on that point of view, and the political side has a point of view and they present a united front. Well, Paul found that all excruciatingly boring and useless. And so if the deputy minister of taxation policy had a different opinion than the deputy minister of finance, he wanted to hear it, right? And if his chief of staff, Terry O'Leary, disagreed with him, she was obligated to say it in the meeting. So, there are people that open themselves up to that. And, I can't use Paul as an example. He unfortunately didn't get to be prime minister long enough to overstay his welcome. But in terms of being open to criticism while being in the job, I mean, he and Justin Trudeau were night and day. I mean, Justin Trudeau, very cloistered little environment surrounded by only nurturing voices. And Paul was willing to throw himself wide open because he thought that the best ideas would emerge from that. He did not assume that he had all the good ideas, nor did he assume that the deputy minister had all the good ideas. He assumed there were other smart people in the department. Let me hear what they have to say, right?
How did he create that safety in that room? Because it's not normal, right? So how did he create that safety? What did he do?
He allowed his chief of staff, who was Terry O'Leary, to disagree with him, which is unheard of, right? She would turn to him in a meeting and say, you're full of shit. That is completely wrong.
Just like that.
Just like that, in those words. And the bureaucrats looked at that and they said, oh, okay, that's the new rules.
Because people want that, right? People want, like, when they see it, when they see the safety. So you can change culture fast, because this is, we've just been talking about how nobody ever does this. Here's this guy who comes into the spot once, says this, and then boom. It's like, oh, it's okay.
Well, you can create your own culture. Absolutely. Right. But it depends on how comfortable you are with being challenged on a regular basis.
It's amazing.
And in fairness, I would even say, though, about Paul, that the longer it went on, little less welcoming of it, Yeah. Because it's so much more comforting to hear the other thing. But he's the best example I've ever known of that.
That's amazing. David, I know we could talk for a long time. And out of respect for your time, I know you've got a lot going on. You just came through a really busy cycle, so I'm really, really excited that you made time for us now. But we've been ending every episode with a hat tip to a previous guest of Paper Napkin Wisdom. He wrote a bestseller. His name is John Ruhlin. He wrote a book called Giftology. He sort of changed corporate gift giving by saying, instead of what's the least I could do for somebody, what's the most I could do for somebody? That's the way he lived his life. And his napkin to me 11 years ago was, what you appreciate appreciates. So he suddenly passed at a young age a little while ago. And to pay forward his impact in the world, we've been asking all our guests to end with a word of gratitude, to share some appreciation to something or someone that has been important to you, or that you just like to give some appreciation to today. Is there somebody that comes to mind?
Kathleen Wynne. Kathleen Wynne was the first woman I had worked with in a leadership capacity. Kathleen Wynne was one of the first gay people I had ever known well. And She and I had very different views about how politics should be conducted, but we became such close friends. And she has taught me, continues to teach me so much about the human condition. I would say, of all the people I've worked with in politics, she's the only one who made me a better person.
That's amazing. I was not expecting that. And thank you for sharing that with me. And David, thank you for joining me.
Nick, it was my pleasure. Thank you for having me on. What a great show.
Thank you.
Thanks. Take care.
That was David Herle, and what a powerful conversation. If you've ever found yourself waiting for a title, an invitation, or the right moment to lead, today's episode made one thing very clear. Power is never given. If you want it, you have to take it. David didn't just talk about power in the abstract. He unpacked what it looks like to own your own role, speak from conviction, and lead without permission. Here's what stood out for me. You don't need permission to lead. Waiting keeps you stuck. Ownership moves you forward. Conviction attracts followership. People want to follow someone who believes in something, especially when that belief is lived out loud. Leadership is a public act. It's not enough to have the answers in private. True leadership is visible, messy, and bold. Power comes from showing up, not once, consistently, in rooms where you're not sure you belong until you realize you do. If you're not stepping up, you're sitting out. And someone else, maybe less ready, maybe less aligned, will take the space you left behind. If even one of those ideas hit you in the gut, do something with it. Take 30 seconds, grab a napkin, and write down your biggest takeaway. Snap a pic and post it with the hashtag Paper Napkin Wisdom. Let the world see what leadership looks like when it's taken, not handed out. And hey, if this episode lit a fire under you, pass it on. Share it with someone who's ready to stop waiting and start leading. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast, and come back next time for more bold insights from difference makers across every industry. Until then, remember, small ideas when acted on become big results. So what's your next bold move? Make it a great day.
Beautiful Anonymous changes each week. It defies genres and expectations. For example, our most recent episode, I talked to a woman who survived a murder attempt by her own son. But just the week before that, we just talked the whole time about Star Trek. We've had other recent episodes about sexting in languages that are not your first language, or what it's like to get weight loss surgery. It's unpredictable, it's real, it's honest, it's raw. Get Beautiful Anonymous wherever you listen to podcasts.